Today, my dear guest is Jack Matuszewski, team leader of Force of Nature, performance marketing agency based in the United States. What I've written about you is former Viking, God of War hero, at least it seems that way. From a career standpoint, SEO specialist in the past. Nowadays, as I said, team leader of Force of Nature. And personally, you're most known from this new framework of testing, of making sure that processes in digital marketing are efficient. And this is why I've invited you today, because I'm interested in hearing more. Hello and welcome, and tell us a little bit about this process.
All right. Well, thanks for having me, first of all. And well, for a guy that has played God of War games at least a couple of times and finished them, this is probably the biggest compliment that I could have received. So thank you. And when it comes to the roles that you mentioned, I think that, well, it's I currently work as a strategist most often. Although I always say that there's, the structure that we have in the organization as a whole, I believe allows us to kind of think about roles as hats that you have to wear depending on the situation. So the majority of my focus currently sits in really trying to figure out how to run performance marketing, because I believe that there's like a lot of noise, a lot of different tools, methodologies, and areas that, if you're a CMO in a digital first company, what's going to happen is you're going to get like surrounded by all of these different representatives of tools, like media bank agencies, and people offering specific solutions, and it's very noisy. Mm-hmm. So the framework that you referenced is something that we use as kind of really our tool for trying to make sense of it and determine how to best move forward in a world that is very cluttered and very noisy.
Mm-hmm. So, first of all, not many people like processes, because that's the human nature for all of us. So how did you end up creating this framework? I'm pretty sure that you'll describe how this framework actually looks like and how it works in the practice. But how do you even cope with that as you move forward? What did you actually feel that you had to create it at first place? Because for a background, Force of Nature is an agency that pretty much runs with bigger clients usually. So lots of channels, bigger budgets, probably channels that are not easy to measure sometimes. And there suddenly comes the Force of Nature team that wants to do something better. So how did you make it up?
Yeah, so I think that I wouldn't take credit for it, like per se. It wasn't me that really like created all elements of it, mm-hmm. But I am trying to connect the dots essentially and try to build this into something that's going to be digestible. Because you have a lot of buzzwords that are going on in the internet, whether it's going to be like incrementality, media mix modeling, and all of these different things. We think about them, but it's a team effort. So I think that when it comes to answering the question on how we came up with it, I would say that it came to us naturally, really. And it was on the back of the need to structure and just being able to really explain to the clients what we are going to do, because this is just like when you go into a client call and you start throwing all of these different buzzwords and, we're going to do media mix modeling, incrementality testing, and this and that and that, and all of you are casting spells essentially that no one understands. Yeah. At the end of the day, we need something that's going to be clear and digestible, so that we can present it to clients and run strategies in line with something that is repetitive. But when it comes to people not liking processes, we are working with a lot of creative folks, which it's not easy to talk about frameworks and processes with people that essentially everyone has their own idea on how to run specific thing. And I believe that there are no silver bullets in marketing. So this framework that we are working on is not something that will, solve all of the issues of today's performance marketing world. And I don't believe that there is a one, strategy that will fit all of the different types of clients, businesses, because it's very dependable on product, on the client type, whether it's and the business type, whether it's an app business or e-commerce business. There's going to be a lot of differences, but there are patterns that I believe we did a really great job at recognizing, at trying to answer the question, what drives success, and which methodologies are something that is repetitive and that is replicable on those different types of businesses. And really, at the end of the day, everything that we consider elements of the framework and of this process that you brought up are elements that are not necessarily like strategies and tactics written in stone. So we are not going to say that you have to do Google Ads this way, otherwise it's not going to work, because that would be bold of us, I think. But what we do is rather think about questions that we have to answer as marketers to make sure that we have enough, we have the tools and the knowledge and the context to make decisions that are going to improve the situation when it comes to performance marketing. So that's more or less how I think about the general structure.
So what are these questions?
So we identified 6, and well, I will try to be brief, but also like provide maybe some use cases, because I think that's going to be most valuable for listeners. So the first question that we usually ask is what happened, and just to give you an example, we are currently working with a client that is an e-commerce business, digital first e-commerce business that sells specific types of shoes. And whenever we onboard a new customer, we do something called opportunity analysis, which is essentially a deep-end marketing audit, which majority of people in this space probably have already seen. But what we try to do with this audit is go a lot deeper into the real business, like bottom line business impact of the marketing activities. And in this specific use case, for example, we saw that back in like half of 2022, the amount of new customers for this specific business started declining. On the other hand, the amount of returning customers has been on the rise in the same time period. So due to, thanks to this historical analysis, we were able to find that at this specific time period, there was a shift in strategy that impacted the business in a way that they started going after returning customers and really retargeting their current audience instead of reaching new customers. And guess what happened? At the end of the day, they just are reactivating customers that they already had in the funnel, and this funnel essentially is bleeding out. And at the end of the day, this turns into a significant decline in general revenue generated. And for example, last Black Friday, Cyber Monday period for them was like 20% worse than the previous year. So that's the question that we are trying to answer. So what happened historically that could inform what are going to be the biggest pain points for this specific MarTech stack for this specific business? And we are looking for the truth, looking for the data in the truth. We tend to focus on the like business bottom line, trying to pull metrics from CRM, look at margins, look at new customer ROAS, lifetime value, profit on ad spend, and et cetera, et cetera. And then we go into the next question, which is why it happened. Pretty obvious, but we have to really determine what caused this. We are looking for things that we have control over, because otherwise this data is going to be useless, right? So in this specific scenario, for example, we saw that there was a shift in strategy, probably caused by a much higher focus on ROAS instead of metrics more related to new customer acquisition. So it's great that you are getting, higher ROAS, you are retargeting users, which usually drives better performance in the long term. And there was indeed a visible lift in sales and for a couple of months since this change was made in the strategy. But this is only a couple of months, because you are targeting users that you already have in the funnel, and then it bleeds out and there's going to be a decline. And this is very much visible. So we started poking around, and it seems like in this use case, for example, there was a shift in meta strategy. Meta ads was a major spender for the specific business, and they lack exclusions in the campaigns, which means that they essentially, even if a campaign is a prospecting campaign, it turns out that without exclusions, we have no clue how much of those customers are going to be new. And at the end of the day, majority of it is probably retargeting, because that's how algorithms work. If you optimize towards purchase, they are going to find the people that have the highest chance on converting. And similar thing happened in Google Ads. So that is where we answer the second question and explain exactly what happened and why it happened. And then we proceed to course correction. So this next element that we try to do is determine what are the short-term priority fixes that we can deploy to improve the situation. And to give you an example of that, we've been working with another business that sells very specific type of supplements in a subscription model. And it turned out that they have limited the attribution window inside Meta ads to 1 day post click. Which again focus on ROAS, and I believe that ROAS is dead, and I can rant about this all day because that's what happens when you focus on ROAS too much. That's what happens. That's what will happen if you neglect new customer acquisition metrics. And in this specific scenario, the consideration period for this specific product is around a couple of days at least, and it's changing the attribution window to 1 day post click essentially limits Meta's ability to reach those customers that would convert in those few days. So these campaigns are going to be focused on reaching clients that will convert within 1 day of seeing an ad. So this is something that is really easy to fix, really easy to change. Obviously, it's going to have significant impact on the general performance because it's probably return on investment is going to go down in the short time window. But then you will start reaching the actual customers that you want to reach that might convert in the couple of days time frame from seeing an ad. So we are looking for easy fixes that we can deploy immediately to improve the situation. And the next step, the next area to which we go from there is monitoring. And this is where I'm very passionate. And there's probably quite a lot of dashboards that we currently use on clients, were dashboards that evolved with the clients themselves. And just to give you an example on how important that is, we've been working with another business that is selling an app for mileage tracking, and there was a situation in which we had to track, the usual metrics for app businesses, so sign up, conversion, subscription, and lifetime value, and all of that. But one thing that we decided to add to our daily tracking dashboards that we monitor on our daily stand-ups was conversion rates in the day one subscription for this specific app with a breakdown for Android and iOS. And what happened is that at some point we started getting really good amount of signups and really good amount of conversions and paying customers, but it turned out that it was all a lie because not necessarily a lie, but the situation wasn't as good as we could have think it was because we started getting a lot more Android friction, and it turned out that in the long run those customers tend to churn a lot faster than the iOS users. So we were able to look at that because we modeled out how much of day one paying customers will we have in the next 90 and 180 plus days for Android and iOS. And this is something that I'm using this example because this is pretty abstract to look at something like this on daily basis. And trying to model out the data, how this cohort is going to look like in 180 days. But by adding this to monitoring to the data that you observe on daily basis, you can find situations like that. And for example, there were other ways to recognize this issue, but maybe it would have taken everyone a week, maybe two, or to get to the point where we understand what drove this conversion. And it's a lot of lost money, essentially, in a week or two.
So is this monitoring a fourth step of this framework, or is it a part of the third one?
Yeah, this is the fourth step of the framework. So the way this works, usually when we are onboarding a new customer, we go into opportunity analysis that I mentioned. So this is the place this is the period during which we answer questions of what happened, why it happened, and how to fix this. And now we move so we assume that at this point we have already fixed issues that were very pressing in the short term, and we are moving into the next phase, which is going to be stability before we move into growth. So we can also think about this framework in kind of 3 steps, three sections or stages. So monitoring comes at this stage, and yeah, we are just pulling pretty extensive amount of data into daily dashboards, and we typically use spreadsheets because I found that they are very flexible, and people hate me for it.
I saw some of these dashboards and they blew my mind. So I imagine, yeah.
Yeah, it's spreadsheets are great to a certain extent because they are very flexible. But at the end of the day, if you want to level up or you want someone to take over, you have to be very diligent when it comes to keeping the structure in check, because otherwise it's just going to get out of hand. So yeah, there's that. And this, I believe, is where it gets the most exciting and where we stand out as a team, because the next two stages are prediction, predictive analytics, and growth. So I would say that this is the third stage in which we think about, we have come to a point where we think that we cannot squeeze out more from Meta or Google Ads or anything in between. Prediction is the question associated with prediction is what's going to happen, essentially. And for the customers that have enough data to do it, we model out forecasts. So we are using and pulling data from places like obviously historical data for this specific customers, whether it's going to be revenue, items sold, subscribers, etc., and look at seasonality, because what we found is that even for businesses that you wouldn't assume are seasonal, there's always some seasonality that you can use to be smarter in planning spend ahead. And this might mean that, for example, there are businesses that are highly seasonal where, during the summer period, their product just spikes because people search for it. And then you have to be there for the customers and make sure you are visible. But on the other hand, there are products which you would assume that the seasonality is going to be the same across the year. But there's, for example, changes in between how people buy in the first week of the month versus the last week of the month. There are differences between how people buy on Mondays versus Fridays versus Saturdays and Sundays. So there's always some seasonality, even for non-seasonal businesses. And we try to model that out to be able to determine how much should be spent and how should we allocate spend across the month, across the quarter, and across the year. And obviously, there's forecasts. There's always you always have to take forecasts with a pinch of salt, because it's modeled out, and you don't have. There are sometimes things that are happening that you cannot foresee. But we managed to figure out forecasts that were like 95 to 98% accurate. And what this helped with is, for example, one of our customers. Is highly seasonal. They are in the pet goods space, pet accessory space. And it turned out that due to proper forecasting, we were able to really smartly manage budget across the year. And for example, we knew when to run promos or when to not run promos. Mm-hmm. So this is about spend allocation. This is about when to run promos. This is about when to launch any product, because that's also something that we help them with figuring out. And how we do that is I mentioned historical data, but there's also different perspectives that we can use. For example, Google Trends is one of my favorite ones, because I believe I'm in the SEO space. As you mentioned, this is my background, and the SEO is always going to be in my heart. But I believe that SEO is a good window and really a good lens on how the market looks like and what the demand is when the demand actually happens. Because people search for it always, like Google is huge, and it's always going to mean that if there's a lift in Google Trends for proper keywords, of course, because this requires analysis, you can be to a certain extent certain that this is going to translate into additional revenue if you use those trends, We now wrap this up with the growth stage, and this is the question of how to supercharge this scenario. So we have an idea of how, for example, next year is going to look like, but how do we, 10x? Obviously, this is a big statement, but scenario is a word that we use quite a lot. Because we typically figure out 1, 2, or 3 additional scenarios of what would happen if, and this usually means that we are going to want to spend additional dollars in specific channel, or maybe pull back from specific channel. I always encourage to prepare at least one pessimistic scenario, because I found that especially on the American market, people tend to be very optimistic about the revenue. So we have to prepare for that. But at the end of the day, so we think about scenarios, and the growth phase is where the magic happens. And I believe that this is where the most revolutionary things sit. And the way we approach growth is, well, you can run a lot of tests. You can, be very aggressive in specific areas. You can decide that you are going to spend like 10, 20% of additional budget into Meta, for example, because you can see that the conversion is acceptable. But at the end of the day, you will never have confidence about how much net new users you are getting in today's marketing world. And I believe that in performance marketing, we are never going to have the full truth in the data. So we have to figure out how to find workarounds. And one of them is, for example, incrementality testing, which essentially means that we are running geo holdout tests. So we run campaigns in specific states, for example, and we don't run campaigns in the other states. They have to be similar to each other for the data to have statistical significance. But at the end of the day, we have a model and we know what to expect. And the differences between what the model would say and what the outcomes of the test are is additional perspective on incrementality. And I'm saying additional perspective because I even cannot say, this doesn't go from my mouth, that it's incrementality, because there's just so much unknown in the data that you have to find data points and cross-check data points to be able to make decisions. And incrementality is one of them. And as for now, I believe this is probably the closest we can get to the truth when trying to answer the question of how much net new customers we are getting for every dollar spent. So that was quite a monologue. Yeah. And I think that, let's move to the other topics. I would just really quickly try to wrap this up. As you can see, those are things that are universal, and they are like they are not limited to one type of client or one type of business, because you can do all of these steps for an app business. You can do all of these steps for an e-commerce business. You can do this for CPG. So this is where we are currently at. So trying to figure out what are the recognizable patterns and elements of success in performance marketing that we can extend to each type of business. Because, as I mentioned at the beginning, I believe that there are no silver bullets when it comes to performance marketing strategy, but there are repetitive patterns and methodologies that you can deploy to increase your chance of success.
Mm-hmm. So first question that comes to my mind after hearing this is, how do you cope with the fact that it always depends in digital marketing? No matter what you do, there's always other opinion about how you should do that, how it's best to do something. So there are many people inside your team, inside of internal team of the certain company, and as you said, you're using multiple tools to help you with this challenge. So each tool probably has its own team that suggests doing stuff the other way. So how do you align all of this and have this probably single source of truth when there's always someone that's telling you that you should do it otherwise? So there's hidden data somewhere that what you're telling is not actually the truth, that the truth lies somewhere else. So how do you deal with that?
Yeah. Good question. I believe that we were also in this position. Like we were the guys that were pointing out that this doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. But this is also explainable. And let me answer with an example. We are currently working with, I already mentioned, the business with the e-commerce business that sells a very specific type of shoes. We are considering which channels are going to be the most incremental and which channels are worth testing. And to me, we had a couple of data points. So we are looking at, we are running some regressions to determine what the correlation is, for example. And the correlation seems high. But this is a correlation, right? And this is something that would be very easy to say that this is just a correlation and we shouldn't make decision based on that. But what I always try to do is cross-check the data between different platforms. And in this specific case, I used, for example, Exploding Topics, which is a tool from ROAS that allows you to pull data on specific search queries, but it also listens to social media. So it's like a little bit of they have those listening algorithms that, for example, Brand24 and similar to them have. And for this specific query, it turned out that the correlation showed that Facebook was winning when it comes to new customer acquisition. When looking at this specific like non-branded keyword for this category that is a proxy for the category, because we can see that sales actually follows this like seasonal demand fluctuation. It turned out that the social media listening tools also say that Facebook is the place where those searches occur most often. And then the third data point is competition benchmark. So we are looking at leaders in the category, and for this, in this specific scenario as well, Facebook was the biggest channel for this specific competitor. Obviously, looking at competition requires you to use externally available data, but we've been looking at different tools, and this is always going to be like, you cannot have 100% confidence, but something that is going to be like directionally correct. And so we've got those 3 data points that point towards the same thing. I don't believe any of them 100%, but we have traces and like signals that from different perspectives, they are pointing towards the same thing. So we have to make this decision, because otherwise, being idle in performance marketing is going to be essentially, an absolute catastrophe for the company. So haters gonna hate, but at the end of the day, you have to make a decision and commit to it. So I would say that the good moment to make a decision and commit to it is where you have at least 3 data points that point towards specific solution or strategy or channel that you would like to test.
Mm-hmm. So in all of this mixture, you're probably very often using Google and Meta ads. What's your experience about results coming specifically from these platforms compared to how they actually work towards reaching a business goals of a client?
That is a wide topic, but I would say that both of those channels have their use cases and areas in which they excel in. And frankly speaking, Google and Meta can probably, like if you think about the funnel, both Google and Meta can cover the full funnel, given the different types of campaigns and networks and placements, etc. What we found that for majority of businesses, Meta is usually the one that performs better in the upper funnel and prospecting, because of how much creative variety it has and the different formats and placements and targeting options. Google usually is better in the middle of the funnel and bottom of the funnel. That is, of course, a wide generalization of the situation, but that's more or less where that's at. The issue I have with the data that we see inside Google and Meta is that, I don't trust it at all. And at the end of the day, in a world where the privacy policies for both for iOS and all of the updates for iOS tools, iOS devices make an impact on how marketers work on day-to-day basis. And I believe that you, instead of looking at attributed metrics for both Google and Meta, you should be looking at something that's going to be a lot more high level and trying to use all of those different tools that I already mentioned, a couple of them. So, for example, incrementality testing or running regressions and correlations. This is all helpful tools to cross-check and try to answer the question of what drives the most incrementality. But one thing that we always do is look at the actual business bottom line data. So we either pull actual revenue or actual items sold from either if it's going to be on e-commerce, we can pull that from Shopify or WooCommerce. If it's an app or a B2B business, we want to have access to CRM, so we can pull data directly from CRM and then stack the CRM data against spend to determine how that all of this looks like, and have visualizations, have dashboards. That will help us determine how spends actually translate to the business bottom line, because Meta and Google are not going to say you this. They're going to say that their channel is the best and you have to spend all of your money in it.
Yeah, that's why I was asking. So the thing that connects all of these things that you're saying is one word, which is data. How much data do you actually need to do all of this? Because let's say, I'd say that at least 80% of companies across the world are probably behind to make it all work. So what's your perspective? Like, how much of a revenue or how many transactions, leads, etc., does a company need to actually empower themselves with this framework?
So I think it's going to be pretty tough to give you even like an estimated number. I would rather move in the area of challenges that they face, and I think that's going to be the most accurate. And I would say that we had the most success with this framework with businesses that were at the point where they scale it into Meta and Google to an extent where they don't believe that there is more potential in these channels for them. And they struggle because usually Meta and Google, you have a lot of people that know those systems. For example, if you try to scale into like TikTok or programmatic or Pinterest ads, it's going to be a little bit harder to find people that actually know how to run those campaigns. So what I see happening times and times again is that companies get to the point where they feel like they exhausted their potential within Meta, and they think about channels like, for example, linear TV or running programmatic or all of the different kind of more niche social media buying platforms. And what happens is that they struggle with new customer acquisition. And this is the most often recurring theme that we see with the customers that we work with, which is how do we scale? Like, how do we break this wall that we have run against? Because they don't see possibilities to do so through Meta or Google, which they know. So they are looking for ways to expand. But for example, TikTok is still a less sophisticated channel than Meta ads, so it's a little bit tougher to do that there. Programmatic is like cheap traffic, which is great for example, brand awareness, but there's again less visibility into how much net new customers you are getting from that. So I would say that for companies that feel like they are stuck and they are running into a brick wall when it comes to scaling and reaching new cohorts of users that might actually convert, this is where we've been most helpful. But I would also say that things like monitoring bottom line of the business, things like using Google Trends to assess seasonality, this is something that every company can do. And it's relatively easy, really. Like when you think about it, pulling data from Google Trends to determine what your seasonality is going to be, which before that you have to do a little bit of a keyword research, but there's a lot of people that can do that for you. So I think that elements of it are for everyone. The full framework, especially the third stage, so predictive analytics and growth, I would say those are going to be most transformational for companies that struggle to break glass ceiling.
So at a fundamental level, pretty much everyone can use it, but they gotta be responsive to what Google Trends are showing us and flexible to make these changes efficiently across many channels. You can sum it up.
Pretty much, yeah. And obviously there's, as I mentioned, the elements of the framework are repetitive, but the nuances are going to be very different between types of companies and where you at essentially with the business.
So you mentioned TV advertising and also TikTok as an example of social medium, but these two vary from each other. But I presume that TV advertising is pretty much easily measurable using geo holdout tests. Probably you can explain in a moment. But to compare it with organic social media activity without making any ads there, like how do you measure the success of putting more creatives and more posts, etc., into several channels? And seeing that, it actually drives revenue, it actually drives growth for this specific client. How do you do that?
It's tough. I believe it's tough. I also have been mostly working with paid advertising. I haven't had that much cases when it comes to campaigns that were more focused on like brand building and organic social media. But one thing that I can say for sure is that everything that you are going to do, in my opinion, should be tied to business bottom line goals. And for example, if your goal is follower growth on Instagram, for example, this should be tied to something that is beyond that. And I even had this one case where we have been working with a CPG company, which is a little bit tougher when it comes to paid media marketing, because those are consumer packaged goods, and they usually marketing is usually focused on brand awareness, and because they sell to like Walmarts and different markets. But what they have been doing is running meta ads campaigns, also paid, but focused on follower growth and reach and post boosting. And there was like hundreds of thousands of dollars being allocated towards those campaigns, which turned into followers. And but when I asked about how it turned into sales and how much customers they have got from these spends, guess what? I mean, no one was able to answer that question, because the goal was, follower growth. Mm-hmm. Like, it's cool, you have followers, but for what do you need them if they don't turn into sales?
Mm-hmm. So you will not easily answer the question if you recommend using TV advertising in terms of driving revenue and growth to the company, because many agencies and marketers are thinking about making a TV ad mainly for its brand awareness goals. So it's not a case with you, probably. You're not thinking about numbers in terms of how many people viewed the ad, but what's there for the business. So how is it possible to measure it?
Well, TV is something that I can rant about for a very long time. It's my opinion on TV advertising, especially linear TV, essentially became a meme in the team because I'm very vocal about it. So here's my take on it. I believe that looking at I call them vanity metrics because to me, at the core of looking at performance marketing, they are vanity metrics, but they have their use cases. I also mentioned that ROAS is something that to me is dead. This is obviously something that this is my type of thinking, but there are use cases of ROAS in certain scenarios where you want to look at specific things, and the same goes for reach and traffic and brand awareness metrics and everything in between. I believe that you should measure this, but have an understanding about what needs to happen to turn this brand awareness into sales, because otherwise it just doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to TV, unfortunately, all of the cases in which I have been involved, I've tried so hard to show that TV had an impact. I've tried so hard to find anything that would confirm that those dollars spent actually had an impact on the business. I have never found it. And it's specifically for linear TV, because connected TV is a little bit different and you have more visibility there. But one thing that is happening is that even like this week, I've been running this analysis for one of our customers, where I looked at organic brand impressions from Google Search Console. I pulled them in monthly granularity with a split to brand and non-brand. And organic impression means that your page showed in organic results, which means that someone actually is searching for your brand. So any lifts in organic brand impressions might mean that if in the same time periods there was TV spend, it might mean that TV spend actually turned into organic brand impressions. So, which at the end of the day means that people are searching for the brand more because of the fact that they saw the TV ad. So I did this analysis, and I'm looking at the charts, and it turns out that during times of increased TV spend, there are fluctuations that align. So we have like TV spend line, and the brand impression line follows this line pretty closely. So we have pretty significant correlation. But in the same time period where the spend was increased, when I switched the time frame to a little bit earlier, because that was the point at which this specific company has increased TV spend up to 50% of their total media mix. So this is like huge.
Massive, yeah.
This is massive. And so we can see this correlation. TV has an impact on brand impressions. When I zoom out, it turns out that when we layer new customer acquisition cost into that, at the time, on the moment in which they started increasing TV, brand impressions went up, and lifetime and the new customer acquisition COG just skyrocketed totally. So at the end of the day, it's cool that you have brand impressions. Again, there is a correlation. It has an impact, but at the end of the day, it doesn't turn into sales. And this specific client, and we are talking about spends of like, it was a couple of hundred of thousands of dollars on monthly basis. So I believe the peak was like 400K, if I remember correctly. But it doesn't matter. It's just like a couple in between, like, maybe a little bit below $500,000. It's the highest amount of TV spend that I saw and never saw an impact. One theory that I heard is that TV makes sense if you have millions of dollars to spend into it. So we are talking about, Coca-Cola and Nestle, like PR meeting where everyone thinks about how to best prepare this ad so that it's going to program unconsciousness of people. That's the type of scenarios.
And clients of these companies are pretty much global. So
yes,
you don't need to think about targeting per se. So it's not about TV not working, but it's just extremely not efficient in terms of cost and what you get in return.
Exactly. Okay. And one thing that I keep seeing times and times again, especially on the American market, is that more and more TV buying agencies and partners try to turn linear TV into a performance marketing channel, which is never going to happen, in my opinion, at least now, with how it works and what technology capabilities we have. And one thing that just triggers me so much is that I had one conversation with, again, a TV buying partner that they have their own reports. And the ROAS on those campaigns was sitting at like 3.0, something like that. Mm-hmm. At the time, we're running Google Ads and Meta, both prospecting, remarketing, and brand, which brand usually has pretty significant conversion. We were struggling to achieve 4.0 ROAS. So, we are struggling to achieve 4.0 ROAS, and there's a guy from TV agency that says the TV campaigns have 3.0 ROAS, which is like essentially those campaigns are
a mystery.
Yeah, and this is like completely brand awareness. So this is absolute bullshit, and I see it happening times and times again in the market. So yeah, there's my little rant.
That's good that you mentioned it, because I would like to move to a second section of this conversation, because we have talked a little about this framework and how can you actually test things around digital marketing. So we as Europeans, we have our experiences across several countries inside of the European Union, but you had your fair share of experience with United States. And judging from the whole process, you have monitored many work from these many of these agencies. So what's your perspective? Like, what we can learn from these agencies from the United States, and what are they doing wrong that they can implement from our job?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So when it comes to the first part and what we can learn, I believe that, from cultural standpoint, I believe that Americans are more aggressive than majority of Europeans when it comes to taking risks. Mm-hmm. Because one thing that I also believe is crucial in everything that we discussed is deciding when something is good enough. And like, this analysis has gotten us to a certain point, and now we have to decide that we are going to test something. Because there's a lot of data that you can pull in performance marketing, and you can layer in next amounts of data into the analysis. And at the end of the day, get paralyzed because you cannot make a decision because of how much possibilities there are and how much data you can layer into the analysis. I found that a lot of American agencies that we had contact with, either when onboarding to a client or just, a little bit more mundane exchange of thoughts, is that they are aggressive. But I think that it's also true for American businesses, like generally speaking, because mm-hmm. there's a lot of people that tend to make risky decisions. And this is sometimes needed in performance marketing. But in terms of what we should avoid, this is something that I've had some thoughts especially in the past few weeks, because we had a lot of weird conversations with various agencies that have been servicing clients that, for example, we are currently onboarding. So we are transitioning essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just scared of how this market looks like. I mean, like we are, this is February 2025. Performance marketing has been in the market for a while. Everyone knows it. Everyone knows what's possible and what's not possible to a certain extent. And I still see agencies that say that, for example, they cannot run Google Ads or Meta Ads on the client's account. They have to have their own accounts, which is absolute bullshit. Like this is not true.
I've heard it from our own market, but I didn't know that it's a global thing.
Yeah, it is. And well, there are certain scenarios in which, for example, if a client is so small and these spends are going to be so small that you cannot get access to, for example, a Google Ads representative or Meta Ads representatives, there are use cases. But when I'm talking to a business and a company that spends around $500,000 in marketing on a monthly basis inside Google and Meta, and they say that their agency said that they have to have their accounts under their umbrella, which means that they have no ownership of these accounts, I'm just losing it. I mean, I don't understand. And if this is something that you've heard, run. This is like, this flag cannot get more red. So there's cases like that. There's, it's very easy to cheat in DV360, for example, because you have this opportunity to, if you run DV360, and again, if you're an agency, you can explain to your client that you have to run this on your account, because otherwise there's going to be various things that are going to happen, which is not true.
Yeah, there are some metrics that are not, that an average marketer is not familiar with. And as I remember, there's this specific setting that you can set up this margin fee or something.
Yeah, exactly that. So, and what happens then if you do that is that Google sends an invoice to the client that is for the full amount. And then a part of it, the margin that you've set for yourself, is they are paying you essentially as an agency, which is like, come on.
hidden cost, hidden fee actually.
And so there's situations like that. Others, I mentioned the 3.0 ROAS on TV campaigns. This is something that was something like really. So yeah. And at the end of the day, something that we also observe is that specifically with customers that are pretty interesting for agencies. So we are talking about digital first e-commerce, Shopify, for example, which is like very, very interesting and very easy to run when it comes to performance marketing. Different vendors gather around them like vultures, and everyone wants to get something out of them. Mm-hmm. And there are different partners that are going to say that you need media mix modeling, you need this, you need that, you need this tool, you need this, dashboard, and everything in between. And I don't envy the CMOs of those companies, because they are the ones that are being dragged to all of these meetings and being told that everyone has a solution to all of their problems, and everything is needed here and now. So it's like with dieting and exercise, where you've got people from every perspective saying that you should drink more water, and then you've got someone that says that you should limit drinking water because it's not healthy. So yeah, that's those types of situations that trigger me a lot.
I get it. So it actually creeps me out. But so what should a true partner agency do for a client, for a CMO, for a marketing manager inside of this company to help them reach their business goals in this true way? So without any bullshit, without hidden costs, fees, etc., etc. So how can an agency help to justify specific actions and help these people internally communicate with their teammates and say that this is actually the path that we should go to, and then it will simply work? Yeah.
I think that our biggest responsibility as marketers is leading with data, that's first of all, and leading with facts that are based on the data. But really being transparent and accepting and embracing this no bullshit policy. Because at the end of the day, we can either be a service provider for a specific business or we can be a business partner. But if we are business partners, I would like my business partner to be transparent and honest with me. And that is how we grow, right? And one thing that, for example, we do is I already mentioned that we are calculating bottom line business metrics, and we pull our own costs into that, for example. So looking at dashboards that calculate business ROAS or, I don't know, business like new customer anything that you can think of, we always pull like the operational costs of the company, cost of goods sold, and cost of different providers and services. So we have a lot of conversations with CFOs and CEOs that lead us to determining what types of costs do we need for this type of calculation. And we add agency cost to that. So if we are working within an agency contract, we are actually calculating ROAS with our cost in mind. Mm-hmm. And we have to be profitable for the company. Otherwise, it just doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. So I think that like if I would be to summarize the most important areas is, so that would be data and no bullshit policy. Looking at the data, showing the data, walking the customers through the data, because again, CMOs have a lot on their plate, and I believe that we should be the ones that are going to help them figure out what the reality is. So data, transparency, and profitability. I think so. I think that would be the three that I would focus on.
So how do you cope with a competitor that says that they can do it better than you suggest? So you may be very transparent. You may present numbers that will prove some profitability for a business. And let's say that there's this another agency that also shows some numbers that are more optimistic if you use their services. So where's this boundary between being honest and start being dishonest because just to sell? So what this specific client needs to do to actually see who's telling the truth?
Yeah, it's tough. It's really hard for those companies because, as I mentioned, they are bombarded with a lot of different communicates, and sometimes they are, on contrary, because you have one people saying that and one person saying that it's not true. I think that at the end of the day, there are some like maybe not red but orange flags when someone says that, for example, a company can grow like 5x or 10x within a year. I mean, maybe, but there is a low chance for that for majority of the companies, at least in the scale which we're talking about. So the ones that are spending like, for example, this $500,000 on a monthly basis, this is usually not true. If you are at that scale, this is going to be tough. If you will scale like, if you will grow like 20 to 50%, this is great. So I would say that anything too optimistic should raise a flag, and everyone will probably have a lot of arguments on how they will achieve it. And I would take a closer look at what they present, because there's always one recurring theme that I also see in the market is that people are still too hung up on creative, for example. And I see it happening times and times again where people say that creative is going to solve all of the issues and scale to the moon, company to the moon, because they are going to be throwing more creative at Meta. And this isn't true anymore. Like you have to take other factors into considerations. I would say that if someone mentions net new customers, if someone mentions business bottom line, if someone mentions incrementality, you can assume that this person really thinks about how to cut the bullshit, how to not get distracted by different factors, different data points that we have on our disposal. And they think about incrementality and about net new versus just maximizing ROAS. So I don't know if that answered the question, but that's more or less where I stand.
Yeah, so it's going to be always a tough choice. I was thinking about this because maybe at this point you gotta just present even more value than the competitor does. I know that I'm saying it from a perspective of the agency that is actually in the mix of it. But I'm thinking how a specific client how can we make it easier for the specific client to make a decision? So in terms of our organization and our teams, there's always a role of a strategist. inside of each project. So how do you, after several years of being an actual strategist in the project and having a multiple team of strategists, how do you feel it works? How do you feel this role of a strategist actually helps the project? How does it align with the whole framework? Because I presume that it's a vital role of it.
Pretty much, yeah. I would say so. It is a valid part. And when it comes to the importance, I would say that it's not smaller than all of the other roles, but there are certain hats, as I mentioned at the beginning, that the strategist has to put on, and they definitely have to have some traits of related to leadership, because otherwise it's going to be pretty tough. Because what happens and what strategists should do, in my opinion, and what I try to do is connect the dots and connect people, really, because we have a lot of brilliant minds in the company. We have a lot of like really talented people and very skilled, very, very proficient with what they do. And they have a lot of knowledge, but they are focused on their areas as they should. And there needs to be a person that's going to say, hey, that correlates with that, and that connects with that, and we should think about it that way, and kind of points into a specific direction. And I mentioned the monitoring area and dashboards, which I believe are crucial. And this is also something that usually is in the hands of a strategist. And I see dashboards as essentially something that gets people together on one specific view, one specific KPI, one specific perspective. So that we can have a conversation. So we have to, strategists, in my opinion, has to control perspective and control direction for the whole team, and search for connections. So I would say that other than data analysis and having like this creative abstract thinking about marketing strategy, this person also has to be able to connect people and their knowledge, and use their knowledge to the fullest potential. And this, I believe, is done by connecting people in one specific like perspective, direction, goal, and looking at the same numbers.
Mm-hmm. So you've already answered my next question, which is about what makes a strategist successful. So for a company that is supposed to select a specific provider of a service and partner, they should also look for someone that has these skills. Like agency can be more about connecting the dots, about no bullshitting in terms of what to do, and also has these leadership skills that are somehow visible when you're talking with someone and having a conversation about whether they take action instead of just being a recipient.
Pretty much, yeah. And I would say that if a person does that, everything that David just mentioned was a bit more on the like internal perspective. So we have teams of specialists, of experts that this person connects together. But I think that for businesses, this would be a little bit more tricky, but I believe that it's doable to determine if this person is actually someone that will think about the correct, about the good stuff. And this is when they start asking tough questions, like, what's the ROAS on TV campaigns? What's the return? Or as I mentioned, the brand awareness campaigns for the CPG company. Like, we have to be the ones that, and strategists have to be the ones that ask those questions and go to like CEO or CMO and be confident enough to ask a question on how this campaign looked like in business bottom line, even though we know that it looked pretty bad. So,
So to have this comfort and actual skill to ask difficult questions the other way. So it's not only because as a person that runs in the agency for many years, I already know that we are often the side that gets difficult questions and we have hard times to answer them. But some of us, I think that we've managed over the years how to cope with them. But in terms of this strategist and this team that is supposed to help the actual partner company, it's good to see that they are asking tough questions to you as well.
Yeah, I would say that we and especially strategists, but generally marketers as a whole, I believe, should be the ones that are going to question everything because there's just like so much stuff, so much noise in this environment that we have to be the ones that are going to ask tough questions for both to client, to partners, to paid media, to specific channels, to attribution, and to ourselves at the end of the day, because we are also, we have to be critical about our work. And I've seen my fair share of situations in which strategists were calling out our team members on weird decisions or not understanding something. So yeah, I think having the audacity to ask those questions is something that might be important for the role.
So about this process, my main question is about the team and how it actually works, because it's one thing to actually create something, to write it down or something, and the second part is everyone is using it. So how does the team performs using this framework? How do they, what's their opinion? Are they feeling okay with that? Did it took a lot to learn how to use it as a team? And what do you think is the future of this framework with the team?
Well, first of all, it was very natural because of the fact that we have a lot of like-minded people in the team, and we've got folks who, as I mentioned, very talented, very brilliant people that think about performance marketing in a way that really impacts the business. I think that one of our main kind of core principles inside the organization is that we want to be entrepreneurial. And that really shows in this type of thinking, because we strive to always think as a business, how business owners would think about their business essentially. So that's where the focus on profitability and incrementality comes in. So I would say that when it comes to maintaining this framework, it's very natural. And as I mentioned on one of the previous questions, it's been built by various people. So I can say that, for example, I was very involved in the monitoring and predictive analytics section, so forecasting and building dashboards, but I'm not working on the account. So for example, the reporting and analysis part of it, so the questions of what happened and why it happened exactly, and with more emphasis on why it happened. This is usually people on our team that are very specialized in what they do, and they can really quickly determine if there are spaces that need adjustments or not. So it's very natural, and we really had no pressure to for everyone to learn the framework as it is. I would say that the framework is rather something that we use, and something that we use to collect thoughts and collect every perspective on how we think about performance marketing. So we were doing that before the framework existed. In a sense, that's how I think how this works. And when it comes to making sure that everyone is going to be aware of it and use it, I think that's where we lead by example. So new team members usually observe everyone involved in the projects on daily basis. They are added to calls. They are added to reporting and client conversations, so they can monitor and observe. And because of the fact that we recruit people that are like-minded, they usually really quickly understand the framework and how it works, and just naturally go with the flow.
Mm-hmm. So let's say I would like to use a similar framework for myself and my company. I understand how it works. What do I need? We've discussed that, but how do you what do you use to write it all down? All these thoughts, learnings, and plans for the future. Are you using some sort of specific tools maybe?
Mm-hmm. So we have Notion, which we use as our base of knowledge, where we have case studies and all of the opportunity analysis that I mentioned. So the audits in which we answer the first two questions, so what happened and why it happened. So we have a repository of all things that we found in the past and summaries of cooperations with the clients. So this is something that everyone can access. If I would like to guide and recommend how to start thinking about this framework in your company, I would say definitely start with that and try to document what's going on in the accounts and try to replicate some of the solutions that I mentioned. They were very briefly discussed, so I don't know, maybe we will figure out some sort of content or maybe some materials that we can distribute to the world, because why not? I think it's valuable, but at the end of the day, some of those activities are going to be accessible for everyone. Like, for example, the Google Trends conversations that we had and just looking at what drives sales. I think this is something that every company should do.
Okay. Thank you for letting me know about this framework. How do you and your team work with your clients? One final question from my side. What's next for you, for Jack, in 2025?
That is a good question. I think that we are still figuring out where do we go with this. One thing that we are certain about as a team, and me as a team, because I speak for me, but we have a group of people that are, as I mentioned, like-minded, and we move in a similar direction. I would definitely want to show the world, the marketing world, that we can be transparent and marketers can be transformational, because I believe that marketing agencies not always have the best opinion in the market, and we struggle with a very biased approach towards marketing agencies. And I believe that shouldn't be true if not for the things that we discussed. So I'm going to rant a lot about how the marketing world looks like, because I believe that I would like to make a change. I would like us to make a change and to be representative on how this world could look like. In terms of transparency, no bullshit policy, and really partnering with customers instead of just servicing them and trying to have as much, take as much as possible from them. So yeah, there's that, more or less my thinking. I think that we will definitely work on the framework and definitely go on a crusade with marketing agencies that are bullshitting their clients.
Sounds like a good one. Wish you all the best for reaching that goal. I think it'll be a good one for not only us agencies, but also for our clients as well. Thank you once again for being with me today. And thank you for all of you that watched our today's episode, and hopefully see you next time. Bye-bye.